The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. This provocative statement by Alan Watts invites us on a fascinating journey through the intricacies of human consciousness. Today, we'll dive deep into the realm of thought, challenging our most fundamental perceptions about who we are and how we relate to the world around us. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting by the bank of a crystal-clear river. The waters flow ceaselessly, carrying leaves, twigs, and reflections of the sky. Now ask yourself this question: are you the river or the observer on the shore? This metaphor, so dear to both Eastern and Western philosophers, confronts us with one of the greatest enigmas of human existence: the relationship between our consciousness and our thoughts. Alan Watts, one of the most influential interpreters of Eastern philosophy for the West in the last century, dedicated much of his life to exploring this question. His mantra, "Don't believe everything you think," isn't just casual advice, but an invitation to an internal revolution, a radical shift in how we perceive our own existence. But why shouldn't we believe our own thoughts? Aren't they the essence of who we are, the most refined product of our evolved brains? The answer to this question might be more surprising and liberating than you can imagine. Throughout this video, we'll examine Watts's ideas and those of other contemporary thinkers who have expanded on his vision. We'll explore how this simple yet profound shift in perspective can radically transform our life experience, alleviating anxieties, dissolving fears, and opening doors to a new level of personal freedom. Prepare to question some of your most deeply held beliefs. You might discover that reality is far more vast and wonderful than your thoughts could ever capture. And who knows, by the end of this journey, you might look at yourself and the world with entirely new eyes. As we move forward, keep this intriguing question in mind: if we are not our thoughts, then who or what are we really? The answer might be closer and at the same time more surprising than you imagine. To fully grasp the depth of Alan Watts's advice, we first need to examine the nature of our thoughts. What are they really? Where do they come from? And why do they hold so much power over us? Watts often compared thoughts to an incessant internal monologue, a continuous narrative that seems to define our reality. This constant flow of ideas, judgments, and associations creates the illusion of a solid and permanent self, what he called the ego. But is this thinking self really who we are? Eckhart Tolle, a contemporary philosopher heavily influenced by Watts, goes further in stating, "You are not your mind. You are the consciousness behind the thoughts." This distinction is crucial. It suggests that there's a deeper aspect of ourselves, a witness consciousness that observes the coming and going of thoughts without being affected by them. Consider for a moment, have you ever noticed how thoughts seem to arise spontaneously in your mind? You don't decide to think. Thoughts simply appear. If you're the author of your thoughts, why can't you simply decide to stop thinking or completely control the content of your mind? This observation leads us to a surprising conclusion. Thoughts are more like phenomena occurring within our consciousness than something we actively create or control. They're like waves on the surface of the ocean, in constant motion, but not the essence of the ocean itself. Jiddu Krishnamurti, another influential philosopher of the last century, eloquently expressed this: "The observer is the observed." In other words, the consciousness that observes thoughts and the content of thoughts are ultimately made of the same substance, pure consciousness. But if we're not our thoughts, why do we identify so strongly with them? Why do we so readily believe every idea that passes through our minds? The answer lies in millennia of conditioning. From childhood, we're taught to identify with our thoughts, to see the world through the lens of our ideas and beliefs. This identification creates a sense of separation, me and my thoughts versus the world out there. Alan Watts argued that this separation is illusory. In his view, we're an integral part of the universe, not separate entities observing it from the outside. You are the universe experiencing itself as a human being, he said. This perspective invites us to a new way of relating to our thoughts. Instead of blindly believing them or struggling to control them, we can learn to observe them with curiosity and detachment. Like clouds passing through the sky, thoughts come and go, while consciousness, the sky, remains unchanged. As we move forward, an intriguing question emerges. If we shouldn't believe everything we think, how can we discern between useful and harmful thoughts? The answer to this question could revolutionize the way you deal with your own mental experiences. Blindly believing in our thoughts isn't just an abstract philosophical issue. It has profound and tangible implications in our daily lives. The power we attribute to our thoughts shapes our reality, influences our emotions, and determines our actions. Consider, for a moment, how a single negative thought can trigger a cascade of emotions and behaviors. A simple, "I'm not good enough," can lead to anxiety, depression, and even sabotage real opportunities. It's as if that thought, once believed, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Byron Katie, a contemporary thinker who developed a method of self-inquiry called the work, observes, "It's not our thoughts, but our attachment to our thoughts that causes suffering." This insight is revolutionary. It suggests that it's not the thoughts themselves that cause us problems, but our tendency to identify with them and treat them as absolute truths. Alan Watts often talked about the game of life, arguing that we take our mental constructs far too seriously. He encouraged us to see life more as a dance or a play, where we can perform our roles with lightness and grace, without losing ourselves in them. But how can we cultivate this lightness when our thoughts seem so real and urgent? The answer, according to many of these philosophers, lies in the practice of mindfulness. Jon Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer in introducing mindfulness to the West, teaches, "You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts." This simple shift in perspective, from identifying with thoughts to observing them, can have a profound impact on our life experience. Imagine yourself in a stressful situation, perhaps an important presentation or a difficult conversation. Normally, you might get lost in a whirlwind of anxious thoughts, but what if instead you could take a step back and observe these thoughts with curiosity? Ah, look at that. There are thoughts of worry arising. This small shift can create a space of freedom, allowing you to respond to the situation with more clarity and less reactivity. Thich Nhat Hanh, the renowned Vietnamese Zen master, compares this practice to watching clouds in the sky. Thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. Consciousness is the sky. This metaphor reminds us that just as the sky isn't defined by the clouds passing through it, our consciousness isn't defined by the thoughts that traverse it. As we practice this detached observation, we can begin to notice patterns in our thoughts. We might notice how certain types of thoughts tend to arise in specific situations, how recurring narratives shape our perception of reality. This awareness gives us the power to choose, not necessarily to control our thoughts, but to choose how we respond to them. Michael Singer, in his book, The Untethered Soul, powerfully expresses this. "You are not the voice of the mind, you are who hears it." This subtle but profound distinction opens the door to a radically new way of being in the world. As we delve deeper, a crucial question emerges. If we shouldn't fully identify with our thoughts, how can we navigate the practical world, make decisions, and pursue goals? The answer to this question could transform not only our inner life, but also the way we interact with the world around us. Intellectually understanding that we shouldn't believe everything we think is a crucial first step. However, translating this understanding into lived experience requires practice and dedication. Fortunately, many thinkers and spiritual teachers have left us practical tools to cultivate this new relationship with our thoughts. Alan Watts often emphasized the importance of meditation as a means of quieting the mind and observing the flow of thoughts. He didn't see meditation as a way to control or eliminate thoughts, but rather as a practice of witnessing without judgment. Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment, he said. This approach is echoed by Eckhart Tolle in his concept of the power of now. Tolle encourages us to focus intensely on the present moment as a way to transcend the constant internal monologue. He argues that by anchoring ourselves in the now, we can experience a deeper dimension of ourselves that's beyond thoughts. A simple yet powerful practice is what Tolle calls watching the thinker. It's about creating a space of awareness between you and your thoughts. Try this now. Pause for a moment and observe your thoughts as if they were clouds passing in the sky. You'll notice there's a part of you that can observe thoughts without getting involved with them. This is the witness consciousness we've been talking about. Byron Katie offers a more structured approach with her method, the work. She encourages us to actively question our stressful thoughts through 4 questions. Is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? Who would you be without the thought? This process of inquiry can be incredibly liberating, revealing how many of our limiting thoughts are based on unexamined assumptions. Pema Chodron, an American Buddhist nun, teaches a practice called staying with the uneasiness. Instead of trying to escape or repress uncomfortable thoughts or emotions, she encourages us to simply be with them, observing them with gentleness and curiosity. You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather, she reminds us. Jon Kabat-Zinn popularized the practice of the body scan as a way to anchor attention in the body and step out of the whirlwind of thoughts. This practice involves systematically moving attention through different parts of the body, observing sensations without judgment. It's a powerful way to reconnect with the present moment and create distance from obsessive thoughts. Another powerful technique is the practice of labeling. When a thought arises, simply label it mentally. Thinking, planning, remembering, judging. This simple act of naming creates a space between you and the thought, reminding you that you are the observer, not the thought itself. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches a mindfulness practice based on breathing. He encourages us to anchor our attention on the breath as a way to return to the present moment. When we get lost in thoughts, we gently notice this and return to the breath. This simple yet profound practice can transform our relationship with our thoughts over time. As we explore these practices, an intriguing question arises. How can we integrate this new relationship with our thoughts into our daily lives, especially in moments of stress or challenge? The answer to this question could be the key to a lasting transformation in our life experience. Cultivating a new relationship with our thoughts isn't just a purely philosophical or spiritual exercise. It has profound and practical implications in all aspects of our lives. Let's explore how this shift in perspective can transform our everyday experiences and lead us to a fuller, more authentic life. In the professional realm, for instance, the ability to not fully identify with our thoughts can be a powerful tool. Imagine facing a major challenge at work. Normally, you might find yourself trapped in a cycle of anxious thoughts. I'm not capable. I'm going to fail. What will others think? But with the practice of observing these thoughts without identifying with them, you can create space for more creative and effective responses. Alan Watts often spoke about the wisdom of insecurity. He argued that by embracing the inherent uncertainty of life, rather than clinging to false certainties created by our thoughts, we can open ourselves to unexpected possibilities. In a professional context, this can translate into greater innovation, adaptability, and resilience. In relationships, the practice of not believing everything we think can be transformative. How often do we misinterpret the actions or words of others because we're trapped in our own mental narratives? Byron Katie encourages us to question our interpretations, especially those that cause suffering in our relationships. By doing so, we can open ourselves to a deeper and more compassionate understanding of others and ourselves. In the arena of mental health, the benefits of this approach are particularly profound. Anxiety and depression are often fueled by negative and ruminative thought patterns. By learning to observe these thoughts without fully identifying with them, many people find significant relief. As Jon Kabat-Zinn has demonstrated through his pioneering work, mindfulness practices based on this approach can be powerful tools in treating a variety of mental health conditions. In the field of creativity and personal expression, not believing everything we think can open doors to deeper levels of inspiration and originality. Many artists and innovators talk about the importance of getting out of your own way. In other words, not letting limiting thoughts stifle the creative flow. By creating a space of awareness between us and our thoughts, we can open ourselves to ideas and inspirations that come from a deeper place than our conceptual mind. In terms of personal growth and self-knowledge, this practice is invaluable. Often our habitual thoughts create a limited and rigid self-image. By learning to observe these thoughts without fully identifying with them, we can begin to see ourselves in new and more expansive ways. As Michael Singer puts it, there is a part of you that remains unchanged no matter what happens in your mind, your body, or the world around you. It's important to note that not believing everything we think doesn't mean ignoring or repressing our thoughts. On the contrary, it's a practice of being fully present with our thoughts, but without being controlled by them. It's a form of inner freedom that allows us to respond to life with more clarity, compassion, and wisdom. As we integrate this practice into our lives, a profound question emerges. How can this new relationship with our thoughts change not only our individual experience, but also our collective interaction as a society? The answer to this question may contain the seeds of a broader social transformation. Throughout this journey of exploration, we've delved into the depths of human consciousness, challenging our most basic assumptions about who we are and how we relate to our thoughts. Alan Watts' advice not to believe everything we think isn't just a philosophical curiosity, but an invitation to an internal revolution that can transform every aspect of our lives. Reflecting on everything we've explored, we realize that this approach isn't about denying or suppressing our thoughts. It's about cultivating a new relationship with them, a relationship characterized by awareness, curiosity, and compassion. It's about recognizing that we are more than the sum of our thoughts, that there's a deeper dimension of our being that remains undisturbed, no matter what's happening in our minds. This perspective has the potential to free us from limiting thought patterns that often keep us trapped in cycles of anxiety, fear, and dissatisfaction. By creating a space between us and our thoughts, we open the possibility of wiser and more compassionate responses to life, both for ourselves and for others. But perhaps the most profound aspect of this practice is how it can reconnect us with a broader sense of who we are. As Alan Watts often pointed out, we're not separate entities observing the universe from the outside. We're living expressions of the universe itself. By disidentifying from our limited thoughts, we can open ourselves to this vaster, interconnected reality. It's important to remember that this isn't a journey with a final destination. It's an ongoing process of awakening and rediscovery. There will be moments when we lose ourselves in our thoughts, moments when we fully believe our limiting mental narratives, and that's perfectly normal and human. The practice isn't about achieving some ideal state of perpetual detachment, but about cultivating an ever greater awareness of our true nature. As we integrate this understanding into our lives, we can begin to glimpse its transformative potential, not just on an individual level, but collectively as well. Imagine a society where more people were aware of the nature of their thoughts, less identified with limiting narratives, and more open to diverse perspectives. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could lead to a world with less conflict, more compassion, and a greater capacity to face the complex challenges we face as a species. As we conclude, it's crucial to remember that this exploration isn't about arriving at a final or absolute truth. It's an invitation to question, to explore, to open ourselves to new possibilities. As Alan Watts often emphasized, life is more a game to be played than a problem to be solved. And perhaps the most liberating way to play this game is with the awareness that we're not limited by our thoughts, that there's a deeper dimension of our being that's always present, always at peace, always free. So, the next time you catch yourself blindly believing a limiting thought, pause, breathe, observe, and remember, you are the vast sky of consciousness, not the passing clouds of thoughts. In that remembrance, you might find a freedom and peace that goes beyond anything your mind could conceive. And so, we invite you to continue this exploration in your own life. Observe your thoughts, question your beliefs, be open to new perspectives, and above all, remember that you are much more than your thoughts could ever capture. In this understanding, you might discover an inexhaustible source of freedom, creativity, and joy.